Hi there, how are you? I'm got my nose in this anticipatory democracy book, People in the Politics of the Future. It's so interesting, you know. It came out in 1978, bit of a personal disclosure, that was the year I turned 20. I was in my second year at uni. And yeah, it's a long time sort of between then and now. I'm just going to close that door. So
Shall we
bear with
restart?
me. No. So yeah, this book is quite cool, but it's really interesting as a window into the way a field develops, you know. Nothing happens in a vacuum. There are all these conversations in here going on about that's things like the state and regional and local experiments in anticipatory democracy, goals for the Georgia program that was written by Newt Gingrich, believe it or not. We've got building a futures network in Congress, you know, a lot of stuff. Citizens movements. Got a great little article from that extraordinary activist and creative futures thinker Hazel Henderson called Citizen Movements. Charting alternative futures, plural. And it's nice to see the term futures with an S on it. And the book ends with what I think of as one of the first really good examples of a futures essay, you might call it. And it's from Jim Data, called The Future of Anticipatory Democracy. And I'll end with a couple of slices from that. But, you know, it also gets me casting around, because I can feel all sorts of reverberations here. Firstly, quite an American book. It's totally, focused on, the politics of anticipatory democracy within America. It's also edited by a very well-known senior futurist, Clem Bezold, as he's called, who's still with us, kicking goals somewhere in the US, I think. But it had me looking over my shoulder and thinking about people like Lewis Mumford with his, there's a book here, his Techniques and Civilization, the interplay between our technology and culture and the way they mutually fold into one another. And that's something that Jim Data ends with here. So I was looking over my shoulder at that particular book, which is why it's sitting next to me here. But I'd like to now dip into this book and give you a few tastes. Firstly, the introduction was written by Alvin Toffler, who coined the term, I think, maybe, anticipatory democracy at the in his book that we touched on the other day, Future Shock. And he says, look, in a world governed by obsolete political dogmas, in which terms like left-wing and right-wing, liberal and conservative are still bandied about freely as though rich in meaning, it is refreshing to come upon a new idea that can't be shoved into a convenient ideological cubbyhole. This book is about such an idea, anticipatory democracy, and I'm proud to have had something to do with bringing it to birth, because as I said, he was using the term in his earlier book. Anticipatory democracy will appeal to people from every position on the political spectrum. That's what he thinks. Not because it offers not because it offers everything to everyone, like a desperate politician, but because it deals with process, as distinct from program. Thus, this book does not propagandize for increased minimum wages, full employment, environmental controls, or cuts to the military budget. Nor does it tell us to hang on to, this is somewhat eerily prescient, the Panama Canal for the future, to slash welfare or to cut corporate taxes, all of which sound like the program that we have today. So what as I'm reading this introduction, I'm thinking how we get caught in spirals, how this could be written almost for the politics and the political situation of today in the US, particularly with that reference to the Panama Canal. So, and he goes on, at length to explain anticipatory democracy and he's looking further at process, and he's historicizing the process, which I think is also very interesting. He looks at the industrial civilization, and the way it formed large, or in political terms, it formed large blocks, the working class, the middle class, and so on. But he's saying that these blocks don't really function anymore. But it's interesting again. He also says, look, there's and 1978, remember, this leap to a new phase of history is bringing with it new energy patterns, new geopolitical arrangements, and so on. Okay? So to me, there's something going on here where he's experimenting with ideas, but it doesn't read like a current 2025 type futures document, but it has many interesting tendrils that attach to it. For me, that sort of stuff comes later, and it comes towards the end here, but I just wanted to flick across here. So we've got Hazel Henderson as chapter 14. Hazel Henderson, if you just Google her, you'll find her all over the place. And that brings us to this lovely paper by Jim Data. What's interesting for me is that Jim Data has just sent me some material to go in a book that I'm editing, and parts of it are almost verbatim from here. My father died shortly after I was born, and so on. High school, he's got this sort of story of Jim's own evolution as a futurist, and telling us why he's thinking the way he does through his own biography. So I think that's very interesting, and it's also important. But what happens then is that we get to classic kind of futures work. So this is 1978, Jim. Of course, it's one of the reasons why he's such a foundational thinker in this world of future studies. He says, look, I spent a great deal of time over the past 15 years doing these things. One, he's trying to find out what the most likely alternative futures are. So he's looking at alternative futures using that term. What various people think the future will be. So he's doing a lot of workshops, a lot of consulting with people. And three, what I personally want the future to be. Okay. During this time, I have taught more than 5 formal semester-long courses in the future. So he's telling us how it is that he's working in this environment, and how his ideas have developed through lots of encounters, which is important. Then he offers us, and this is classic sort of future stuff, he says, look, there are 10 categories of images of the future that he wants to touch on. I'm just going to tick them off. And I used to have this article scanned, this particular chapter, so I might go and find it and put it up for you to have a look at. So he says, look, there's the que sera, sera image of the future. Whatever will be, will be. We're just passive bots in the world. He says number 2 is, as it was in the beginning and now and ever shall be. Okay, for hundreds of thousands of years, until only recently all humans lived in an environment that changed so imperceptibly that the past and the future were not predictors of anything much. Okay, he goes on to explain a bit more about that. Then he says, look, after there's the in winter, okay, followed by spring. Okay, can't be far behind. It's a cyclical view of social change. And he says, why can't you make something of yourself? In other words, it's a go-getter, development, growth, model image of the future. So, and that one he spends quite a bit of time on. Then he's got one where he's talking, gives us a sort of Marxist type of thing. After the revolution, come the revolution, developmental images of the future, that we need profound breaks, and that there must be collapse followed by renewal. Then he's going, oh, but some people are really worried about the coming of a new dark age, of industrial collapse, social disorder, Mad Max sort of world. Number 7, we're getting there, towards a steady state for spaceship Earth that will sort of climb through everything, and now technologies will stabilize, human population will stabilize, and so on. We're getting there. Number 8, let's return to the Garden of Eden. Let's just go back to a quiet rural world, okay? Sort of the kind of hippie dream of the 70s, where you just drop out and go and live in the forest, okay? Number 9, I'm just going out of my head. Everything in my head, everything in this reality, should I say, is purely in my head. It's psychological, and if I just think positive thoughts, the world will get better. Prayer, meditation, consciousness, expanding consciousness, all these special beliefs, they are all that are needed, okay? Or also all that is possible. The external world is an illusion, as he says. So they're 9, but he goes to number 10, and I think this is where I fold into my thinking around early here in this book of Techniques and Civilization here. He says, number 10, my own view of the future does not fit comfortably with any of the 9 that we've just touched on. Instead, I see the future of the world, okay, being shaped by 3 forces. The first is the conflict between those who desire and encourage continued industrial growth and the growing number of people who favour some form of low-tech, low-energy, humanistic, decentralised, conservative society. So that's the first one. The second major force shaping the future, in my view, will be new technologies. The technologies that are going to shift the world around us. And this is where he touches here, because he turns to Marshall McLuhan. Still number 2, we shape our tools and thereafter our tools shape us. So the internet is shaped, we create the internet, and then the internet creates the conditions in which we have our current political dilemmas occurring. And then the number 3 over here is the third major force that I believe will shape the world, is the decline of the West and the rise of the rest, okay? Whereas the Asian, particularly the Asian, but also basically the global South is what Jim's really thinking about here. Okay, so that's what, and I didn't tell you what he called that, did I? I skipped over because I wanted to hold on to it. It's got a lovely title, Machines of Loving Grace. And this is where we see another move towards where we are today in our futures thinking. He touches on the concept of preferred futures, okay? So I do not think China is at all an appropriate model, says Jim, nor do I believe that there exists anywhere in the world today or in the past an adequate model for our future. So we can't turn to the past to create the world that we would like to live in. The conflict between those favouring continued growth and the supporters of environmental, humanistic, conservative society, the impact of new tech, and the decline of the West parallel with the rise of the third world, all these factors combined lead me to conclude that neither a refurbished present nor a revitalised past indicate with great clarity the path towards our preferred future. I think that's so interesting. So, and that's pretty much where he stops. But to me, that is a great example of the new voice, a voice that speculates, offers us a set of alternatives, plays with images and so on, and powerfully critiques each of those images too. So anyway, another good book. Next time we're going to jump into the non-American world of futures. I'm going to, but I'm not going to tell you where. Okay, keep that for next time. Thank you. Bye.